This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by the Genesis Company, coming at you Friday morning. It's December 22nd. I got Kyle Theige here with me today after the Wolves beat the Lakers 118-111, and now 21-6, still tied with the Boston Celtics for the best record in the league. Kyle, we put together a bunch of different, probably too many niche-y sort of topics to get into from this game. But just, I guess, bigger picture, they have 6 losses this year. Obviously, they lose Wednesday night in Philly, but they've never lost 2 in a row. I don't know if I've really talked about that at all this season. I don't know if it's even all that, like, maybe that's just what good teams do. But what do you make out of that? Kind of the resiliency of this team, and it kind of like seems like an assumption of theirs or a belief of theirs that, you know, we're not going to lose multiple games in a row, and they didn't last night. What do you make of that? Just to start.
It is Friday, December 22nd, and the Timberwolves still haven't lost 2 straight regular season games since March 31st, 2023. That was 267 days ago.
Wow.
That was my only stat I had written down, so now it's just all vibes. It is crazy, though, right? And yep. We talked about this earlier this week at Flagrant Howls with Phil Mackey, but they all the losses are kind of like, okay, like that, you know, like we came into this season as hyped as we were and in the preseason, all that stuff. But that first Raptors game, you're like, yeah, this is just a weird matchup. It's a little odd being on the road for your first game in Toronto and stuff. The Atlanta game was obviously the worst loss of the season. There's not a lot to pick from, but that was a really bad loss. Then like the Phoenix one, it's like, yeah, that was after an emotional Golden State back-to-back that they won both.
And the Phoenix game was a back-to-back itself, too, coming off of the second Golden State game.
Yep, and then the Pelicans loss, I think that's when they got Zion back. Did Ant play on that? That was like a week ago.
No, yeah, that was no Ant.
So just, you know, stipulation or simulation or whatever was a little weird.
Kings one.
The Kings one, that was about the Kings one to me stands out again. They're 21-6.
Yeah.
Everyone just take
I'm excited for that game on Saturday. Like that to play the Kings again there, because that was, I don't know, not like the worst loss, but like the
maybe
healthiest. The one they got beat most.
Yeah, like that was the one where I remember coming away from being like, and it was the in-season tournament thing where it's like, if you win this, there was actually some stake in it, and they just, of all the games that they've lost, again, count them on one hand essentially, that one was the one where they got outplayed, and you're like, oh, that could be an issue moving forward. Like they didn't dictate the pace or anything. They struggled to rebound. They just gave up so many open threes. But yeah, to bring it all back, they haven't lost 2 in a row. I don't even think that's a product of just being a good team. That's crazy. Like we're 2 months into the season, and just last night again, I know both teams, Wolves and Lakers, were on the second night of a back-to-back, and one of those, I kind of freaked out about this earlier in the week after the Philly game, and you and Britt went very in-depth on the whole fouling thing, but my takeaway from that was, like, not all fouls are created equal, right? And I think that was Britt's point, too, is, like, a shooting foul and a non-shooting foul are a lot different. Not all back-to-backs are the same, but, yeah, both teams had to travel on the second night to a different city. They come back, no LeBron. But what I took away from last night, and not to already move to Chapter 2, but
let's do it.
Wolves played everybody. Second night, back-to-back, first in the West. Last night at home, they had every excuse to just sit a guy or be like, Mike, we're gonna have you sit for a little bit, or we're gonna take it easy, we're gonna limit minutes, load management, all that stuff. And you tweeted it out in the afternoon. Every single player was available, and that's cool, and that's part of this culture thing that is hard to define because we're not in it, but we experience it. And that's Finch, that's Conley, that's this new Wolves mentality where we're going to try to win every game. And you can, second guess this down the road if someone does stub a toe or sprain an ankle. But, I mean, they don't win last night's game without Mike Conley playing, and we can get into the Mike Conley D'Lo stuff. But he was awesome. He's 36. He could have easily sat for 20 other teams in the league, and he didn't. And that's just part of this whole formula that's really working right now, is that everyone shows up every day thinking not only are we going to win, but we're going to play. And that's sometimes 90% of the battle.
I don't have this clip because it was from before the game when we were doing pregame media, but I asked Finch about that, and I was like, you've said a million times you're going to be a team that plays, right? Like they've telegraphed this since the beginning of the season. Like, we are not going to be a rest team. Our players don't want to be a rest team or whatever. So I was like, okay, what's like a different way to ask this? I'm like, how have you seen the benefit of that, right? And I wasn't really expecting this, but he was like, we wanted to create an identity coming into the season. That was one of our most primary goals. And we wanted that, being a team that plays, to be a part of that identity. And he goes, it can be the identity because our guys want that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't force this idea into their identity. They chose it to be part of their identity because the guys want to do that. And like you mentioned with Mike Conley, that's kind of like the one, right? Where you're like, well, this would be the guy that makes sense at 36 years old to maybe rest on a back-to-back here and there. But he's kind of the perfect example of it, in that he might want to play more than anyone else does. He wants, he doesn't want that night off. And John asked Finch about just kind of the whole thing around Conley specifically with these back-to-backs. And here's that clip.
What have been your conversation with him like about playing on back-to-backs, about just the minutes load that you want him to have at 36 years old, and with how important he is to you guys?
So yeah, I mean, Mike, he's annoyed when I'm asking him how he's feeling. He feels fine. He says he's great, and he told me the other day that he actually usually finds that he plays better the second night of a back-to-back oftentimes. So, he did so in Phoenix, so he did again tonight. So I now have to believe him. I just trust him. Like, he takes care of his body. We look out for him in the right ways, but he wants to play. And I think tonight, like, probably at Brown to the max that we wanted to play him, but we're not overthinking it. Yeah.
Kyle, so Jace is doing these like weekly sit downs.
So good
with Mike Conley. Yeah, everybody check that out. Conley Corner, pioneerpress.com. Jace, obviously,
that was the one they approved. They didn't allow me to do the Minot Minute, so they gave Jace Conley Corner.
But just from talking to Jace, who's obviously getting to know Mike really well through doing that, is just, he's kind of been saying to me for the couple months of just these like random little anecdotes where he's like Mike's like crazy competitive, like, and you don't really get that, right, from Mike's disposition, particularly like off the floor. I think we see like flashes of it on the floor, but sometimes too he's like on the floor, cool cucumber. But this is an example of that competitiveness. What other 36-year-old in the league is, I guess, historically, or like last year, who did this? I don't know. I mean, maybe that's something I need to look up and be like, who is the oldest player to play the most amount of games? But
probably LeBron. whatever the search.
Who didn't play last night?
Yeah.
Oh, last night. Yeah. But I just think I think it's noteworthy that it's Mike, because we've talked about this before, where you have these different types of leaders, or the leaders who lead in different ways between Ant and Cat and Rudy, right? But Mike is your more traditional leader, I guess, in just maybe some maturity and how his personality is. He's a leader in the fact that he gets followed,
Mm-hmm.
And this is part of the identity. It starts with the leadership, and not just Mike wanting to play, but Ant does too. Rudy's 31. Like, Rudy doesn't want to be resting and sitting on these back-to-backs either, and it's congealing into making sense that this is part of the identity of this team. And this was only their second back-to-back of the year. Finch also said, we're going to be mindful about this going forward. I don't think this means like pencil in Mike Conley for 82 games this year, but they're going to lean on the side of being a team that plays, and that's just going to make you win more games, right? Like, I think we said this when we were doing preseason stuff. Like, that's one reason to bet the over, right? Is that you knew that's what they were signaling coming into the season. We're going to be a team that plays, and because of that, they're proving to be a team that wins.
Yeah, on that competitive note about Minnesota Mike, you were in the locker room last night. There was I don't know if the video is from the team or something, but Mike was getting interviewed post game in the locker room, and they were asking him about like that steal that he had.
Yeah.
And then Ant just kind of chimed in from the corner, like, I would have dunked on you or whatever. And then Mike just like subtly, you have to go watch the video because Mike's face.
I should have clipped it. My bad.
He's literally being a professional, giving a good interview to all you media members, and then he kind of just looks to the side with this little wink in his eye and was like, I would have stole it from you too. Like, just like, no, like Anthony Edwards is the face of this team. He's the face of this franchise in this city right now. And Mike just has no fear kind of looking at him like, I would have got it from you too. Like, I would have beat you too. So
because he's legit really good at it. Like,
Yep.
That's not just a joke. Like, he probably would.
Mm-hmm. and to the bigger picture thing, the beauty of these Friday pods, it's all vibes, right? Like, you get all the smart people out of the way, and now we can get into things that you can't really measure, but you're there. So I really want to flip it back to you. You're there. You go to the shoot rounds, you go to the practices, you go to all the post-game, pre-game stuff. This stuff matters, right? Like, this matters. This matters to 21 and 22-year-olds and 23-year-olds that might get dinged up, might get hit on a hard screen, might fall down on their hip, and they see the 36-year-old, the oldest person in the locker room, and he just continues to want to play. And he doesn't want to sit, and he's gonna do all the stuff. Like, again, you look around the league, there's just not a lot of 36-year-olds that are playing this consistently, this many minutes, and playing at this high level too, right? Like, that's the other thing. He finishes the night 16 points, 8 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, just 1 turnover, 1 foul. Super efficient, 6 for 9 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3. It's really incredible, and that's enough Minnesota Mike talk for a second, but it also kind of dovetails into last night was a really good example for me of the differences between this season's point guard and last season's starting point guard. Because one finish was 16 points on 9 shots, the other finish was 17 points on 19 shots. One finish with 8 assists and 1 turnover, one finish with 8 assists and 4 turnovers. Just the efficiency and the leadership that Mike brings is a major, major, major part of why this now works, and it didn't work last year with D'Angelo Russell.
No, that's a great point. And the defense too, right? Like,
yeah.
And they were a good defensive team last year when they had D'Angelo Russell, but I think what maybe makes them an elite defensive team this year, obviously the time, it's not all just swapping Conley for Russell, but that Mike can be, 5'11" or 6 foot, whatever he is, and not be a liability whatsoever defensively. I think about that Boston game a lot, where he should just physically be a defensive liability, and he was important in that game defensively specifically. So, yeah, I mean, I think that swap, amongst other reasons, just the defensive one is why a way in which Mike has really just elevated this team, and D'Lo didn't play all the time either. That's a factor too. Over the time that he was here, there were sporadic in and outs for 3 games here and there, and those were injuries and stuff. But in 51 games, Mike Conley's been on the team. The Wolves have had 51 games since Mike Conley was traded for. He's played in all 51 of those games, plus the 5. Well, plus I guess the 2 play-in games, plus the 5 postseason games, and what is that? 58. He's played in all of them. There's been 6 back-to-backs through that, and Mike Conley's played in every single game, and that's.
And he was at the Young Gravy concert too for the jersey debut. No, and again, this isn't. I'm not going to pivot.
That must have been harder than a back-to-back for him, I think.
No comment. I just want to pivot this. You can't watch last night's game and you can think about 21-6, and you can think about the offensive execution or another high maturity game from Carl, who we should probably talk about at some point.
Yeah, sure.
But you can't watch that game last night and not think about the trade deadline of last year, especially last week. We kind of kicked off trade season, right? And now we're going to be into trade talk for the next 2 months. But that Mike Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker for D'Angelo Russell trade, man, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go into it, but that is one of the best trades. If this team were to hypothetically be as good and go as far as we're starting to kind of creep into our minds think, that trade becomes one of the best trades ever. like for what they got. And again, if you watch last night's game and you just, D'Lo had 17 and 8 and Mike had 16 and 8, like what's the big difference? You can't box score hunt that one because it's just D'Lo kind of shot him back into it in that late fourth quarter, but that's because he had already shot them out of it, right? I think he had 1 point entering the fourth quarter. And for the D'Lo stuff, it's just he's better than his haters think he is, but he's not as good as his fans think he is, and that's kind of the conundrum. But they just the maturity, the ability to not dominate, but just have an effect on both sides of the ball. I mean, last night too, I know I'm just shitting on him right now, and I try not to, but D'Lo said something after the game. He's like, yeah, defense is, I try to be better at it, but that's not what I do. And it's kind of you're kind of claiming that if you can't make shots, you're not impacting the game. And for Mike has shown that he can impact the game without always having to score, but then he'll hit you with that 3 in transition that's a killer, right? Like he still has that competitiveness. He still thinks I can get a bucket just as well as anyone else on this team. So, and that's big because I still have this thing planted in my brain for future pod and stuff. This team still lacks scoring. And it's another thing I think about every night. The Kyle Anderson minutes, some of the Naz Reid stuff, I still think this team lacks another score. And if Mike can give you a little more there, maybe that eases some of the stress as you approach trade season.
I actually want to focus on that.
Okay.
That is becoming more and more the third offensive weapon on this team, right? It's Cat and Ant. And then the third weapon is that Gobert and Conley 2-man game, at least in in the half court. But let's grab our first ad break here. Today's show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. We're excited about I love having local sponsors on the show. It makes sense for me. I think it makes sense for them. Many of you listening, about like 64% according to my metrics. The metrics I get are here local in Minnesota. And we know not all of you, Your Home Improvement Company knows that not every single one of you needs a new bathroom or needs new windows at your house. But some of you do and will do that. And maybe over the holidays, you're going to be sitting around and you're going to be thinking about, man, we had our family over and our upstairs bathroom is bad. Let's get that taken care of for next year. And Your Home Improvement Company for the month of December is offering free installation on a bathroom install. No interest, no payments, nothing down till 2025. You can contact Your Home Improvement Company at just yhic.com or at 844-270-7180. Also, winter drafty windows. You're going to be letting in cold air this winter. If that's what you got going on at your house right now, Your Home Improvement Company has custom built and energy efficient windows direct from the factory that come with a lifetime warranty. And also in December, they're offering a buy 2 windows, get 2 windows deal at half the cost. Also, no interest, no payments, nothing down until 2025. So if you are considering new windows or a new bathroom, we always say is, keep in the Wolves family. Your Home Improvement Company is supporting this show, makes it possible for us to do this. And we'd love if you do have one of these projects to consider going to them. Again, 844-270-7180 to set up a consultation, or just go to yhic.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. All right, Kyle. After the game, well, just really in the second half there, right? The Lakers are putting 2 on the ball on Ant all the time. That might be as aggressive of a blitzing of Ant that I've seen in any game ever. And that was, we're not going to let that be what beats us. Was kind of their plan in this game. Obviously, then that opens up space for Carl, right? And I thought Carl, we'll talk about that too, has looked great off the dribble attacking. He's just getting to the bucket with less resistance, and part of that is additional attention that Ant is receiving, but also it's more decisiveness from Carl. But I want to talk about like the third weapon, main weapon in the arsenal for this team is the Conley-Gobert 2-man game, right? It's something they're going to, I think, more and more over time. I think it's getting more and more effective. It's like, you see that, right? Like Mike does the thing where he waves like Troy Brown Jr. in the left corner. He's like, get over to the right corner. And then it's just him and Rudy on the left side of the floor. And it's a really sort of dominant action. And to have that, again, in your arsenal, in addition to Ant and Cap, because we know that you can somewhat take away Ant with the double, right? You can somewhat take away Carl away with the double in the post. To be elite, this team needs that third weapon, and I think that's becoming something that they can really go to. And I think about in the playoffs when things are bogged down and you're playing more in the half court, I think that's going to be a weapon. It's going to be one of those things that you can just kind of like hammer and maybe force the Clippers to take Zubats out of the game, or or the Suns to take Nurkic out, whatever. I just think we should be acknowledging that is a serious weapon in here. I have a clip from Rudy, but just kind of first your thoughts on the chemistry of that two-man pairing, and also just like the effectiveness of it.
Well, I want to talk about another trade in a sec, but I will say too, because I texted you this late last night, as there's nothing better for a fan. I know I'm speaking for a lot of people here, and maybe you too, but just after a win to just start to go around and get some funny tweets, see what Timberwolves Brazil posted, read some fun stats. But I looked at the box score last night. I think I took a screenshot of it and just saved it, which is so weird. But the starting five, just if you go look at the box score for the starting five, it's kind of like a perfect box score. And we'll go back to the Mike and Rudy stuff too, but it was the first time in franchise history where each starter had 10 plus points, 3 plus assists, and 1 or more steals. But it's such a balance, because that's something I've been thinking about too, is like, okay, you take out Ant for a sec, and then you take out Carl, like who is the third banana? And Jaden's giving you a little more offense since returning. Nikhil will come in.
It's Rudy and Mike.
It's Rudy and Mike, and it's really like, it's like, I don't know, I think back to like my high school days of high school tennis. It's like you have your 1 or 2 really good tennis players, and then your third banana is like your doubles team. And Mike and Rudy are this elite doubles partners that they just get each other so much. And it makes me think again, and the last time I'll bring it up, the Rudy Gobert trade was just lauded at the time, July 2022, and then from there on forward as just the worst trade ever because of the picks and all the compensation. But it was like the Utah Jazz gave the Wolves this lockbox, and then 6 months later gave them the passcode. Like I honestly, it's a serious question I have from like a basketball standpoint, is if you have all these picks that are owed to you from this team, why would you give them the password to unlock this 7'3" Frenchman? And they did that. And ever since Mike's been here, I mean, that's as much of the Rudy Gobert unlocking and all this stuff clicking as anything else. But I don't know how you, from a well-rounded team, like when you said at the top, they haven't lost 2 in a row. Is that the sign of a really good team? I think it's a sign of a really good team when you have not only multiple options, but it's also not just all ISO options, right? Like Ant, the way he gets his, he said this after the Miami game, is way harder than I think Carl has to get his. Carl has the easiest way to get a bucket, I think, on the team. But you have the way Ant can do it, the way Carl can do it, and then if those 2 options don't work, throw the ball back to Mike, let him bring Rudy up, and you have this unstoppable 2-man game that, they just have a ton of weapons right now. I don't think all the weapons are sharpened enough. The offense still has, again, weekly meat on the bone, but the way that Mike has unlocked Rudy, the way those 2 interact, that is another reason I think we give Carl this, he's the ceiling. I think if Mike and Rudy are executing this well together in a 2-man game, that is also just a new ceiling that I've never really thought of.
And at least a floor, right?
Yeah,
it's
probably more important as a floor, yeah.
Yeah, that where if Ant's having, which happens sometimes, like one of his 4 for 18 games and Carl's in foul trouble or something, like it does give you some stability to the floor of what this team can be offensively, which is important because they're not as good of an offensive team as they are a defensive team. I asked, this is a little bit of a long clip, but I at least thought it was interesting. It's Gobert talking about the kind of the power of the 2-man game with Conley. And I thought the part at the end was interesting too, of like, I don't know, when this comes up, Kyle, like, listen, he doesn't want to do it too much because it makes the other 3 players on the team get bored. I was like, I never thought about it that way. So I'll play this clip and then I want to talk about that part in particular.
the pairing with you and Mike is really the two-man, like, empty corner pick and roll stuff. It seems like you guys have been doing that more and more, and it's been a more and more effective weapon. To have something like that in addition to Carl and Ant offensively, what is that, a really different style way to generate points, kind of mean for you guys?
It's a lot of weapons, you know, and it's for us, it's, I mean, we know that obviously the talent that we have, the also Mike, myself, the experience that we have, and what I really love this year is that we finding balance into what we do, you know, and also we realizing what, you know, based on who we're playing, the way they're guarding us, what is more likely to be even more efficient, and that's credit to, I mean, all of us, the coaching staff, and especially Ant, because a lot of it is Ant gaining their maturity, understanding that it doesn't need to score 40 to be the best player or the best offensive player on the floor. It doesn't need to, you know, to force. Like, he can, if he has two guys on him, that's the highest form of respect you can hope, you know. And sometimes it's two, sometimes it's three guys, you know. And just making the simple play opens up everything for everybody else, and we have some pretty good guys around him. So, you know,
Kind of seems like you go to it when they're putting two on the ball and Ant a lot. The two-man game.
Yeah, we go to it. I mean, we go to it. Try to go to it regardless. We just try not to abuse it. Right. It's kind of like not fun, you know. It's super easy, but we don't want to abuse it early. You know, maybe if it's, you know, playoff time, like, we might run it a lot if we need. But right now, we just try to keep learning, you know, running different actions. We're seeing different coverages, and it's really important that we able to use the regular seasons to work on all those different, you know, actions.
Sorry about that. I thought the element about Ant there was interesting, right? And I've just noticed this over the course of the season. So many more compliments by Rudy to his teammates. And I think he's like one of those people who only gives compliments when he believes they're deserved. You know, like he hold, like it's a precious thing to give or something. And it is a credit to Ant, right? That can be that Carl can. Right now, it's getting to be like Carl and Ant basically have like the same stat line, same amount of shots. Like, Ant's recognizing that, seems cool with that. He's cool with allowing them to, you know, for 4 of 7 possessions, just really go at it with the two-man game with Rudy and Mike. So I think that's wise to give credit to Ant there, and then just also additionally, I thought it was interesting. He was like, we don't want to run that too much. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, you guys are like 15th in offense. Like, that's really, he goes, it's too easy. I'm like, okay. But I guess I get it in when you do run that two-man game and it's in the corner, like, nobody else is really touching it. It is like, we are running this action and we're going to try and find Rudy on the roll, or Mike's going to try and come off of it and take like a step back 3 or whatever, maybe a floater. But I don't know. I found that all interesting, and another signal of like, this team is growing offensively, even if it's not fully reflected in the numbers. It's, you know, I'm keeping in my mind this idea that a lot of these Finch teams offensively, come the turn of the new year after Christmas, right, have really become elite offensively. And it's sort of these, it's a gradual process, but we've seen it multiple years where 25, 30 games in the year, they click into becoming so much more than they were offensively. And if we're looking for breadcrumbs for why that could be, I think this is the Ant element of that, and the effectiveness of this third weapon is a reason to believe that, this could be a top 10, top 5 offensive team, in addition to being, I don't know, a top 2 defense at the end of the season as well. I just found that all interesting.
It harkens me back to, ironically, when Kevin Garnett gave that awesome viral little speech where he was loading up all the different weapons. That's kind of what the Wolves do, right? It's like they're loading up. They got this Anthony Edwards isolation. They got this Carl, you know, spacing from 3. They have this Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert pick and roll. I listened to Rudy talk, and also too, Rudy does a lot of post game stuff. Is that, I mean, you're there again. Like, is that just because he's the friendly green
always
giant?
says yes. Yeah.
Okay. Which I think needs to be like,
Yeah.
pinned or mentioned, because I've covered games with
I just
you.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Not always do these guys want to talk, and not always do they. And I know people listening to this have a different view of the media sometimes, but those clips after games, especially after wins, are so valuable. And I just am appreciative that Rudy talks all the time. We still have a larger sample size of just bad Rudy experiment than we do good. Like last year was still, you still think about the punch with Kyle and some of the
I would
weird
even
vibes.
say last night the offense was more bad than good.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, not even like on the court stuff. Just like, when you think about Rudy
I got
still,
you.
it's still like, and I'm starting to wonder, was last year, even though it was a full year, was that whole last calendar year, whatever, was it just like a lot? Was it a lot for like, you're moving from one franchise that you've been with for 8 or 9 years, and there's all this pressure, and you're always hearing about the picks, and you're always, because what I'm trying to ask you is, Rudy Gobert seems like an awesome teammate. And I think that helps too. I think he is clearly more comfortable now than he was last year. But I don't know, man. Like last year, I'm thinking Rudy Gobert, Hakeem Olajuwon post-ups, calling for the ball. And now you're telling him, like, hey, that two-man game you have is unstoppable. And he's like, yeah, but I don't want to bore my teammates. It's like, that's like a completely different angle for this man who went from I need the ball to like, oh, actually, I don't need to touch the ball. Quick aside, stop dribbling. Stop dribbling the ball up the court. Rudy Gobert, it was funny for a second. It is always a disastrous turnover. Stop. Give it to a guard. But anyway,
Did you watch that whole post game of Rudy?
Yes, I watched. Yes.
Did you hear the back and forth between him and Britt?
Yep. Should have clipped that. No, it is though.
Everybody go watch that. Britt just asked Rudy about it. It was in good fun and everything, but like Britt was like, should you be dribbling the ball up in those fast break situations, or like should we passing off of it? And Rudy like points at him laughingly, like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And I'm like, oh no, maybe not. Like, I'm kind of.
At least he didn't fucking lie to his face. But no, it is because that's something I've always thought. We've talked about this now. It's like you have Ant, you have Carl, but is like Jaden the third guy you go to as a scorer? Right? He's getting paid way more now moving forward, or is it Nas? And I don't. Even if you're a big proponent of the Mike and Rudy pick and roll, I don't think this team knows exactly with a bullet who their third option is. Leader in the clubhouse would be this Mike and Rudy thing, but I think that makes him tougher to guard. That, in that first half against Philly or whatever, if you need Jaden to just go off for a career high in the first half, he can do that. He'd bring Nas off the bench. So it's got to be harder to scout and strategize against a team that you don't know where that third punch is coming from. But the third punch right now is that everything that Mike does with Rudy, and it opens up so many things, but it also keeps Rudy involved a little bit, because I joke, but I do think when Rudy gets an offense or a defensive rebound and pushes the pace, or there are less moments this year where he needs the ball, but I still think there are moments where you can kind of feel it in the screen that like, hey, he needs a touch in a better way than just throwing in the ball in the post, because he still doesn't really have a post move, but he does need a touch. And that's another reason why I love having like Mike as the point guard and not maybe point Ant or some of the stuff, is because Mike's not only getting his, but he has a vibe for like, okay, who hasn't touched the ball in a while? And that's like, to me, the number one thing of a point guard is just getting, the guys in the right spots, but also getting the ball to people who maybe haven't touched it in a while to keep them engaged. So I don't know. The two-man game is incredible. I don't know if you have any numbers on it, but just it came through last night again for sure.
So, I mean, I'm well on the record, particularly last season, of being like, I thought this team needed to run more pick and roll.
Correct.
I thought it was a way to add structure to a team that I thought pretty clearly needed more offensive structure. Last year, they were 24th in the league in the frequency of pick and rolls that they ran, and 12th in effectiveness of those pick and rolls. You want to guess where they're at this season in those two? And guess frequency first. How the Wolves run pick and roll at X frequency in the NBA?
9th.
19th still.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It feels like more, right?
Yeah, I would have said top 10 for sure.
And 14th in effectiveness this year. But it isn't. I guess when you think about it too, I think it's maybe very deliberate and noticeable when they're doing it, it's less so like the quote unquote random pick and roll that teams get into. But what really stood out to me was Mike Conley's the frequency for him of his offense that is derived from pick and roll. This is not a heavy overall pick and roll team, but he's ran the 25th most pick and rolls this season in the NBA. And I thought this was interesting. Of the 42 players who run 10 plus pick and rolls per game, those pick and rolls are 67.2% of Mike's pie of his entire offense. And which is to say, he doesn't do a lot else, right? He isn't a big isolation player. He isn't, I mean, we know catch and shoot isn't his game, but comparatively, spot ups or isolation or everything else is 1/3 of his offense. 67% of his offensive generation comes out of pick and roll. And, I look at that 19th number for the team of pick and roll, and I kind of think to myself, that doesn't seem like enough. But I don't want the Wolves to just run pick and roll to run pick and roll. Like, Anthony Edwards, quite frankly, not great at that yet, and that's a place where you would get more pick and roll. You don't, Nikhil, you get a little bit of it. I think it's okay to be 19th in overall pick and roll so long as you're running a lot of it with Mike and Rudy, if that makes sense. And I think those numbers back up the idea that they are. And I think it's why, again, to kind of wrap this around, is why it is the third offensive weapon on this team. Behind Ant and Cat are number 1 and 2 in the offensive pecking order, but that's 3, and it's a weapon. And judging by that answer from Rudy, it's going to be one that they believe in can be something in the playoffs that you can, punish an opponent with. And I think I'm like, okay, cool. I am getting to a place where I'm like, all right, Finch, I get flow, I get this. We're doing just enough pick and roll that I think it makes sense for this team, and that's definitely not what I was saying a year ago.
And now that it's wrapped around, to put a bow on it, it's another reason why this morning, after that game against that team and that roster, Timberwolves 118, Lakers 111, you kind of thought that's what D'Lo was going to do with Rudy as well, be like this pick and roll maestro 2-man game. Because when you watch, and I think I'm maybe more bullish on D'Lo than the average person, but when you watch him like run 2-man game with Anthony Davis, it's incredible. It really is. But that's because Anthony Davis can pop more, is just, a better offensive player than Rudy. But you bring Mike in here and they're running pretty much the same actions as they tried with D'Lo, and he just knows how to get the pass. I think there was a moment last night where Ant and Rudy ran a 2-man game and they doubled Ant. He kind of tried to split the pass, and he threw this pretty hard bounce pass, and Rudy's hands didn't translate very well, and it was a turnover. So yeah, you're right. Ant doesn't totally get. There's spin you have to put on the ball. There's a height where you have to put the ball. That's the whole Mike gets it, Kyle gets it. Although you had a great tweet, not to spin off of this totally, but how ironic it was that last year Kyle Anderson was the only guy that spoke French, and you needed him on the court, and now it's almost unplayable with those two guys. The Kyle Anderson stuff continues to kind of be a roller coaster, but yeah, Mike and Rudy is this team's vegetables in a sense. You can't just have a full day of vegetables. I will preach that, but you need to have some of it, and Finch probably at times needs to have more vegetables because it is so efficient, it is so strong, and it's just another weapon that I think there's ways to still get Carl and Ant in that mix. I've loved when Rudy catches kind of that pass in the middle of the court, and then he kind of does the Draymond thing where he turns and throws it to someone. So there's a lot of other actions off of that, but that's something that they can go to, especially maybe not late in games because you're still, dealing with Rudy maybe getting fouled and having to go to the free throw line. But it's another action that's totally different than what Carl or Ant gives them, and it's something to keep monitoring because when that's good, this team again it's not even the ceiling. Like you said, the floor is okay, they'll get a bucket, or they'll at least get a good shot here, and that's all you want sometimes late in the fourth.
Kyle, let's talk about the Kyle Anderson part of that.
Do we have to?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's I think it's an interesting topic here because it goes both ways. I think people are really picking up on, and it's right. Like the Wolves offense is significantly worse with Kyle Anderson on the floor versus off the floor this season. And it's not that he's not a smart player. It's not that he doesn't have an ability to score in the lane and be a passer and all those sort of things. It's that he's not shooting. I think he's 2 for 20 from 3 on the year, and really the 20 is almost as concerning as the 2 is. Because that wasn't the case a season ago. That 3-point volume was double that, and it's causing some spacing issues. Not necessarily, or Finch isn't to the point where like those are spacing issues to the extent that he's like, okay, I can't play Rudy and Kyle. He is continuing to play them together, but saw that a bunch last night. We've seen it a lot for maybe the last 3 weeks or so, where it's in the scout. Teams are playing off of him. Obviously, Rudy's not a threat on the perimeter. When Shake Milton was in the rotation, their opponents were playing off of him, and it's bogging down the offense some, but it doesn't make sense to remove Kyle Anderson from the rotation because, what is your alternative, right? Are you going to add Shake Milton back into there? I know like people have seen like 7 or 8 Leonard Miller highlights or something and think he should be playing 14 minutes a game for this Wolves team. This is a top team in the league. It doesn't have room to let a young, extremely raw player to be able to do that. There's just
No, I know. What are
the options? I guess I'm getting a bunch of messages and stuff after like Kyle Anderson can't play. He's killing the offense. This and this and that. And I'm like, I'm seeing it. Yeah, the spacing issues. It's tough watch when that's going on there. I guess I just don't know what the alternative is. I've talked a little bit about like they're having him on ball a little bit more. He's playing more like point guard. Where you can't just leave the point guard wide open, like they can leave him wide open in the corner. I think that's kind of a half measure that's getting there. But so I don't know. I don't know exactly what the solution is.
It's probably the number one topic to talk about because seriously, I think we're well under now 2 months left till the trade deadline. It's all going to move fast and furious. And it's not that he is holding this team back by any means. Maybe he's not boosting it up as much as he did last year. Again, 10% from 3 is essentially your Rudy Gobert. But he's also the contract that makes the most sense. He's a bench player. Like he has a lot of characteristics of the piece that would make sense. He's also probably, in my mind at least, I can think of at least 12 other playoff teams that would benefit from having Kyle Anderson on their team. Right? Like Golden State, if they never get Draymond back, Kyle Anderson just becomes their Draymond. And I also think too, and you've talked about this more with Britt and with Jace, but I don't know. This is all eye test now. This is all vibes and what my little brain thinks. But I still love Kyle on defense because he's literally not fast enough to overreact to a player's movements, if that makes sense. Like his defense is the prototypical YBL look at the player's belly button. Don't look at their eyes. Don't look at their arms or their hands. Like just follow their belly button and stay in front of them. But last night, I don't know. Did he kill the offense last night? Like 9 points off the bench, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, a block, 1 turnover. I literally go back and forth on like, you can tell now he knows I think he's starting to shoot more threes again because they're talking behind the scenes like, hey man, you have to at least be a threat. And if you hit 1, maybe that's what'll trigger you to have a season like you did last year. Now you'll hit 2 and you'll hit 3. Right. But he took 2. What did you say? He's 2 for 20 on the season. Well, he took 2 shots or 2 threes last night. That's a significant percentage of his season. So he just needs to continue to be aggressive. He does try to look for a shot more in kind of that mid-range where he kind of does that sky hook thing. But I don't really have an opinion. I just know that Finch still loves him. I joke that when things are going bad, Finch will just put him in. Just like, I don't know, just go pick someone and take him out. And he does give them a nice different defensive person. Like he can guard centers, right? Yeah. He's not going to guard Joel Embiid for 28 minutes, but he can just give you different looks and different coverages. But I don't know. He's the one piece that this isn't an anti-Kyle Anderson podcast or an anti-Kyle Anderson take. It's just he's the guy that makes the most sense because I don't really know if anyone else on that team. You're not going to trade Naz Reid. You're not going to trade Nikhil.
Right.
But, Shake Milton's probably not going to get you much. Wendell Moore's not going to get you much. So Kyle will at least get you something. And as all these beautiful numbers and colors on the screen show, it's
super nerdy, but it's just
it's tough.
What I have it sorted by is on-off differential on offense, right? And the offense this season has gotten the most worse when Shake Milton is on the floor, and Kyle Anderson is the next most worst. They're 6.1 points per 100 possessions worse offensively with Kyle Anderson on the floor this season than when he's off the floor. Defensively, they are a little bit better, about the same. And so, I think we have this belief, we have this understanding of being around the team, the impact of Kyle, the person, the player, the leader, the teammate, all that sort of stuff. I've downplayed this a lot. I've kind of done why are we talking about trading Kyle Anderson? I just don't see that happening. To be fair, I need to acknowledge the numbers here too, is that this is an average offensive team and they drop drastically below average offensively when Kyle Anderson is on the floor. And it, again, I don't know what the internal answer is to replace that or change that out. I don't think Finch is really interested in trying to find that. It does open the question of when trade season comes around, I think that's going to be the basic element of conversation here is, do you put Kyle Anderson in a trade or not?
Yeah.
Because what I noticed too after in these last few games is Finch has found his rotation, right? He's like,
yeah, that was a good note. Yeah.
We're not messing around anymore. It's 8. Right, it's Kyle, Naz, and Nikhil off the bench, and then it's Troy Brown for maybe 1 or 2 6-minute stints.
42 made baskets last night, 32 assists.
Yeah,
so, I mean that's
and it just works, right? It's starting to work. That rotation is the one that makes most sense for this roster.
8 guys and a little bit of Troy. That's going to be and it might not even be Troy come playoffs time if this team doesn't make a single move, and they get a buyout guy. But last night, that's again why I thought the box score was perfect. I thought the minutes allocated were perfect too. Mm-hmm. That is their 8.5 man rotation last night, unless they make a transaction. And I'm with you.
That's what I'm saying is what is the transaction? If it's not Kyle, right, and you trade Shake Milton for Bones Highland, where does Bones Highland play? Because he's not higher than any of those 8,
Right, and that's why this is weird, and that's why it's going to be weird for the next 7 weeks, and your messages are going to blow up, is because you don't often see a team that is a contender and also blowing away expectations, no one thought they'd be this good, not be in a position to add anything. Yeah. And the only really thing that they could add would be using Kyle, because you're not going to, there's also, too, there is that 2024 summer stuff. There is all the dangerous words that are going to come up, but you can't worry about that now. You just, even if you want to, right? You just can't. You have to lean into this because this is what you essentially pinned your whole career on, is this Gobert experiment, and it's working, and you have all these guys, so you're not going to trade Carl. You're not going to worry about any of that stuff. But there is still in the back of my mind, I don't even want to talk about it, the whole summer 2024. Do you lose both Mike and Kyle? Do you lose one of them? Who do you pick between? And when the Kyle stuff's a little not working as well, and we just did 20 minutes on how the Mike stuff is working really well, it's something that you at least have to think about. It's okay, well, if the Kyle stuff's not working super well, and he might bounce this summer, do we try to find... But to me, I'm not going to bite on the Kyle Anderson trade talks until I can see, and you'll, I'm sure, promote a lot of this, but until I see a real deal that makes sense, right? Because the Tyus Jones thing, I don't think is real, and they'd have to put so many pieces to make all that stuff work. I just don't know of another player out there that, like you said, that's going to come in. Who is it? Who is that player at $9 or $10 million or maybe $12 million if you pair Shake or Wendell? I don't see it right now, but it's something to keep monitoring because, back to your tweet, he spoke the most fluent French last year to try to make the Rudy thing work when Carl went down, and now it is really, really difficult to play those two guys together.
Yeah, No, it's and maybe, that's the good thing, right, about having 55 more games or whatever, is maybe you can find something here that detracts from some of those concerns.
And God forbid, maybe an injury. Like, you knock on wood, you don't want that to happen. But if an injury does happen, all of a sudden the pieces might make a little more sense, right? Because I still worry if you're trying to make any move. I don't think this team still has a backup point guard.
Yeah.
I know Point Ant is fun and Nikhil can do stuff, but I don't think they have another adult that can play real serious minutes at that position. And that's no knock to Jordan McLaughlin, but he's just a limited player, right? So that's the one area I would fix. And if Mike goes down, I do think Kyle fits that role. He can do a lot of what Mike does. So
just one last thing on the whole trade idea, Kyle or otherwise. I think, part of the logic goes, all right, we are a contender. We need to make a move to get even better because we're all in, we're going for it, right? And then there's total on paper logic in that philosophy. I think it's important to, when we think about the trade deadline, when we get there, to remember how that, and this is obvious, that there's a limited amount of assets, right? Of picks to be attached. Obviously, no first. I mean, they got a handful of seconds, but it's like, if you trade 2 or 3 of those seconds, right, at the deadline to, upgrade off of Shake or upgrade off of Kyle, if you think that's a good idea, you don't have those 2 or 3 seconds this summer then to be able to make a trade when your roster is going to not have this full 8 for sure, right? Like, because there's going to be questions about Conley returning or Anderson returning. And there might be, when you go, all right, we're kind of cool with the 8.5 we have in our rotation now. Why use the limited assets you have now to try to address something that might not even do anything, rather than this summer when you don't have a locked in 8.5 to maybe use those to go get someone that needs to, replace whoever in the rotation there. So I get the idea of being all in and going all in, and to that end, even considering a Kyle Anderson trade. But it kind of, does that make sense? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, saving some of that makes some sense here too.
And you're right. And then the devil's advocate, and I don't know if I even believe this, but this is with respect to that Western Conference Finals Timberwolves team led by Kevin Garnett and Latrell Sprewell and Sam Cassell. With respect to them and the most successful season ever in franchise history, this is so far the best Timberwolves team in franchise history.
Yeah.
So,
and to that end, you maybe like, you go,
Yeah,
I don't know if we're going to need a movement shooter in the playoffs, but I know we don't have one right now. So maybe we got to trade 2 or 3 seconds to go get
and
it,
I don't want to
whatever.
speak on the East because that's a different kind of beast. I still think the Celtics are god level, but the West is wide open. And the Nuggets aren't playing as hard as they need to right now, but outside of them, I really think that there isn't another team in the West that you would stake your career to, whether it be Phoenix, Sacramento, Golden State, the Lakers, any of the Clippers. So you're right. They are going to need asset management starting this summer. But the two-sided coin is that you also have built something that you tried to build, and now you're close to the next level or contender status. Everyone's like, are you going to not throw some second-round picks into the mix in February because you got to worry about what the books could look like in 2025? It's really tough, and it's going to be a really tough conversation. It's going to make for great content over the next 6 to 7 weeks because you could make a really good argument to not do anything, and you can make a really good argument to kind of go more all in or make a move that, does dangle one of those wonderful second round pick kids that are playing in Iowa. Like, it's going to be really tough. And that's why you bring Tim Connolly in, who all of a sudden now hasn't really missed on a transaction. So you kind of lean into, I don't know, what would Tim do? Like, you trust that he's going to make the right move.
Kyle, let's talk about Cat.
Do you want to rapid fire quick? Cause I wrote down my tweets.
Yeah. Let's get through some of them. Just the one, I don't really have a big thought on this other than I'm watching Carl play and he looks fast.
Yeah.
He looks so much faster than I ever had. And I asked Finch we didn't get it. What I should say about Carl first, I guess, is he left the game.
54-minute mark. Hey, is Carl hurt?
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't know. We didn't get like any real update post game, and just, I guess, inside baseball a little bit, like how it works is when a player does leave the game, hurt, like they're not available to the media. So we didn't talk to Carl after the game. He was getting treatment as we left. Finch didn't give much of an update, but it didn't seem like a ton of concern. Just me sitting there live, when Carl kind of walked off the floor, it was like after he didn't get a foul call, like he went to the basket, didn't get a foul call, and seemed sort of frustrated. And it was just it just kind of looked to me like I'm worn out after having played 60 some minutes in the past 48 hours. Maybe I got a Charlie horse or something like that, and I'm walking to the side there. I didn't in the moment take it to be like this is an injury. This is just like I'm going to bench. But he did go back to the locker room, and we didn't talk to him after the game. I don't know. I'm getting again, yeah, like you said, got a million messages of like, is Carl okay? I don't know.
Sorry about that.
But I didn't get the sense he was, and I guess just the most important thing is we didn't get any sort of update on it. But like Finch kind of alluded to, it wasn't even on that last play before. Like he's like he took a hit earlier.
I thought he got like teed up. You know what I'm talking about? And again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a reporter. I'm not a lot of things. But I just kind of thought he like took something to the thigh when he was driving. He does still fall down a lot. He does get a lot of contact. Although last night he had a couple of those. I don't know if they were back to back, but he had those kind of runners in the paint that are.
Yeah, this is what I want to talk about. Like,
okay, cool. I would just say, well,
I don't know. I just feel like we should touch that element of it.
And we'll find out later today.
Yeah.
They have an off day. They're traveling. They're going to Sacramento tomorrow. So you'll get the injury report today that probably, we'll see. Is he listed as questionable? That's a good sign. Probably if he's anything less than that, it's not a good sign. But that's just also something to monitor too, right? Like this team has probably had better health luck than your average NBA team, although we can all think of how many games Jaden missed and how many games Ant missed and stuff. So it's just something to think about. But yeah, when I think about Carl last night, I think about your tweet that he was playing fast. And then also he has developed, and it was at its peak, right? Was it against the Pelicans when he hit that kind of running like floater off the glass or whatever to win the game? Was that the Pelicans game? When he drove
Pelicans game,
yeah, just like he has developed now this move or this set of moves that avoids charges, and that was always a big thing. So point. Now he can drive from the top, which has kind of been his Giannis thing that we've talked about in the past, and now he knows how to put that floater in the air, which also can then parlay itself into if I'm going into the lane, I'm going to put up a floater. I could also just make it look like I'm like a lob to Rudy. So there's all these different ways to kind of build off that, but. Overall, and this was a big flagrant house topic, as you can imagine, but ever since that Boston Celtics game, this is probably all encompassing the best Carl has ever played. And that's not just production, because that's not true. Like, he's had bigger, better performances. But the maturity, the way Britt noticed this last night, the way that he would not get fouls called and be kind of amused by it rather than triggered or pissed off, that was also, he took a charge last night that was the most blatant. Like, oh my God, that was a great charge that Carl just took, and there was a play on. I was like, what are you talking about? And he didn't freak out. He just got back up. So his play has been awesome. But when I think about last night, I think about Carl hitting those floaters.
Yeah, so again, we didn't get to talk to Carl. That's just kind of I went in the locker room thinking, like, that's my one thing I want to ask. All right, we don't get to talk to Carl. I asked Finch and Conley about it. Like, are you seeing what I'm seeing, and like the speed, and what impact is that having? And what separately both Finch and Conley said was its decisiveness, and decisiveness looks like speed too. Not to say that Carl isn't faster or doing that, but that's always something we've kind of talked about, of maybe what Naz can give sometimes that Carl doesn't give. Like, that's one of Naz's best offensive attributes, is his offensive decisiveness. And I think what I'm seeing when I say he's playing so much faster is probably just more decisiveness. Plus, he did have the calf strain last year. When he came back, his legs were not physically there in the way that they are now too. I think that line of thinking is logical there too. So decisiveness and just using it more and being more mindful about how he's using that speed downhill to the basket. It's the most frustrating when Karl leaves a game with like 2 or 3 threes attempted and he has 2 or 3 charges that he committed, right? If he's only takes 2 or 3, 4 threes in a game and you're like, well, but like the floater game was there. He was decisive on the perimeter attacking. You don't just sit there after the game and go, why did 4 different players on the team shoot more threes than Karl did tonight? You know, like it makes a little more sense. And like there's meat on the bone with Karl's offensive game too, you know, like there's more threes, there's more stuff. Like I think his offense is going to get even better over the course of time here.
One of my favorite things is I've done this long enough, and I still play basketball regularly at a lesser level, I guess, in the NBA. But you can tell if you have an eye for it. People have an eye for different things. I feel like I have an eye for when you can tell a player is just really comfortable and not thinking. And I don't know, this is just eye test, but it seems like Karl has had more running tip-ins in the last 10 days than he's had in the last 8 years, where he just flies through the air, gets
feel.
this,
That's
you know,
feel, right?
that's feel. That's just he's a half step quicker, not maybe even physically, although he does look great physically. He just is. He has transitioned now. He is a power forward, right? I know we don't love positions, but he has made that transition. It has been promoted internally and externally that he has had to sacrifice the most. Whether you believe that or not, I kind of do. But now you're seeing that he has transitioned.
How is that even up for debate?
Right. No,
It is.
Hey,
Like
I read the mentions. Okay, speculative cum guy said I'm saving everyone's life last night. So he just doesn't think as much, and that's it's like that's what you always say about Nas. He just doesn't think as much, and that allows them to play faster, play freer, zip the ball around more. And I still, if you had to pick anyone on this team though that still has that that meat on the bone thing, it's Karl, right? Like there's still so much to Karl's game, whether it be
and
shooting more
we're saying
threes.
that after we just said he's playing the best basketball of his career.
But that's probably that builds into this sustainability thing, or is this real, or where can this go moving forward? Because we are only at the 30% mark of the season. To me, it's like now if I found out Karl had 35 in a game, I would guarantee they won that game because I just think everything else is so sustainable and so concrete. So
for sure, if it's a game that Ant and Mike and Rudy all play into, which
play. That's a good stipulation. So I don't know. I'm with you on that. I also, if you have anything else on Karl, just take it away.
But this was the least rapid.
The other thing I took away from last night, and this is probably, I guess, the only one thing I want to say is Jared Vanderbilt is averaging 1 point per game. I just thought that I don't even know how that's possible, but I was just last night Wolves Lakers, such a history, all these guys. I respect and appreciate what they did during that one postseason run, but I think the Wolves just have some better players on the team now. Do you get the sense when you cover this team, especially at home or when you're watching on the road, like any fan does, that this team has a little bit of arrogance, but not that arrogance that drove us crazy in the past when they've never actually done anything, like they've never won 2 games in a row?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Like an arrogance of, we're not that we're better than you, but that we're going to win the game. Because last night it seemed like, again, the Los Angeles Lakers are in town, and I never thought once that they thought they were going to lose, to the point where they kind of played with their food a little bit. But that is another
it was weird,
thing.
Right? It kind of felt like that where, it last season, right? A key theme was, blowing first half leads, right? They'd kind of get up by 12 or whatever at halftime and get comfortable. And they went on to blow a lot of those. And there would be these times where you're like, this is a little too happy-go-lucky right now in the second quarter when you're up by like 11, and then you kind of have the PTSD thing. So you start like looking for it and you're like, and then it happened, they blew these leads to a lot of bad teams. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but last night felt the most like that to me. When I was watching that game, where I'm like, it was like the 2 ant lobs in a row. The second one doesn't go, and it's like laughing. Nas and him are laughing up and down the court. Where Micah Nori's on the bench with his head in his hands, and I was like, I'm like, this game does feel a little too close. Like, why is it 66-60? Like, your body language to me looks like you're up by 22 points.
Yeah.
And again, that's probably my PTSD of watching that happen last season. I put that down in my notes too. Like, played a little arrogant, but I'm not sure that's a bad thing. Like, they did get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And they were right to be like, all right, like, yeah, it's the Los Angeles Lakers, but they don't have LeBron tonight. Like, we do expect to win this game. And there's a double-edged sword, right? There's power in that too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, something you need to caution yourself with. And I think Finch is really in tune to that too. As everyone was, probably rightfully so, past couple of years ripping on him for timeouts. I'm liking, like, he's had a shift in his mentality, I think, surrounding timeouts, where there was even just like at the end of the game, D'Lo hits those couple shots. Finch is like, we're still up 9 or 11 or whatever, calls the timeout there. Like, let's not let this spiral out. I think he catches them when they're feeling themselves a little too much, but I'm not saying it's overall bad to be feeling themselves, if that makes sense.
It was one of the first things he talked about post-game when he addressed the media, was just like,
he was a little pissed. Yeah.
And that is maybe why I'm so pro Finch. Also, by the way, as of this morning, Chris Finch is now the betting favorite to win Coach of the Year. Just going to keep updating everyone on that. But no, it's part of the reason why I love Finch, because I'll never understand the X's and O's and all the stuff that you guys do. But from just like a personality manager and managing a group of people, he's almost the one that gives the least damn about what they've done. He's always the one that kind of is putting them in their place. And from people you talk to, like, that also sounds like what it's like at practice or at shoot around, is not letting these guys' egos or heads get too big, because they are off to the best start in franchise history. They are 21-6. They have been first place in the West for a month. But Finch is kind of telling them the same thing that your biggest Timberwolves critic would say, is like, you haven't done anything. And you keep getting really close to the burner. And last night was one of those, I think all of a sudden 2 minutes into the fourth, the Lakers were like up 3. Yeah. And like, hey, what? You're getting way too close to the burner, man. Like, step away and close this out. And that personality, that type of persona, is just as big as Ant being the number 1 weapon, Carl number 2, and then Mike and Rudy number 3. Like, having that type of mentality in the huddle. Mm-hmm. Last night, I think it was during the first half, but like, Leah B. Olson came on and was like, yeah, Finch kind of got into him in the huddle. It's like, I love that. I love that, because there is a new arrogance about this. We always used to complain about the Wolves being like, why are you so cocky or arrogant? Like, you haven't done anything. Technically speaking, this team also hasn't really done anything, but it's a level more of, maybe arrogance is the wrong word. Maybe it's more maturity or confidence, but they have
arrogance,
something.
Yeah, has like this
confidence
negative connotation to it. And if I'm saying I'm not sure it's a bad thing, then I shouldn't be using the word with the negative connotation to it, But it's something, and like, you are 21-6. That is something to have a confidence about too. And I think I think all this is they're navigating their way through this. Like, all the players have said, we, particularly once Mike and Nikhil got here last year, we felt like there was something special here, and they had higher expectations than all of us did. I don't think their expectations were this high. I mean, Kyle Anderson said as much to us. So they're navigating this too. Is I guess what I'm saying there. You got another?
Do you get a sense too? This is kind of it to wrap it up for the holidays. Do you get a sense that on home games the fans are like that too? Yeah. Like, just like not an arrogance, but just, there is, at least I feel this talking to people that are going to games, seen online, a little more confidence brewing in like the fan base of, not, it was sticky last night in that fourth quarter, but you just constantly believe.
You have a belief,
right?
Yeah,
a belief. Yeah,
maybe that's the word, not arrogance, but a almost naive belief. And
it'll burn them. They'll lose a game because of it. They'll lose a game because at some point you play with your foot
learn from it
and learn from it. But I think, going back to what we said an hour ago about not losing 2 in a row, that this team learns from their losses. Yeah. I think I have maybe not covered, but I've watched way too many Timberwolves teams that after that Philly game, getting kind of punked, having the whistle not go away, and all that stuff that you could pin your kind of whatever, your complaints and excuses to, they just flew home and played a different brand of basketball less than 24 hours later. And that is the biggest thing. We went from, depth and all that stuff last year to continuity this year, and now I just think it's trust and maturity. Words you rarely would describe a Timberwolves roster as, but the maturity from top to bottom, whether it be Finchy, Conley, whatever, is just really great, and it's been sustainable so far. I know we're at the 30%-ish mark, but they're also, we talked about that 16-game stretch, right? 11 on the road, this disastrous schedule. They're in it right now, but they're 4-2. Yeah. And I think it was like, hey, if they can just play 500 ball and survive this, the West is still cannibalizing itself, and teams are having. The Lakers won the in-season tournament and have completely cratered since then. So everyone in the West is going through something, but the Wolves just continue to kind of come to work. They're all active. They're all playing, and they trust one another now that towards the end of the game, I think they lead the league right now in like winning percentage in the clutch time. So it's crazy stuff.
I don't expect them to be 500 over this 16-game stretch. I expect them to be over 500, right? Like if we were just setting the line, we're setting the line right now of this 16-game stretch. There's 11 of which are on the road, all against over 500 teams when it started, and you know that they're now 4-2. Like what if we had to set a line to bet on? What would it be? Like 9.5?
In that 16-game stretch, 9.5. 9.5 would be the number, actually. Yeah, like
I kind of expect them to be 10-6 over it. 9-7. I think 8-8 is, given what we've seen from the team, a little disrespectful.
Yeah,
and maybe it's us setting the bar low or whatever. I've said it too. I'm not, but they are 4-2 over this stretch. And they are going to lose. They are going to probably lose some games over this time. I don't think it's fair to assume. I think it's wrong to assume that they're going to lose half of these 16 games. I don't think they will.
And you have actually been good about this for me, but it's also really dumb to just look at a whole 16-game stretch and be like that, because a week ago I would have thought LeBron plays, right? And then LeBron doesn't play. But they do have a couple tough ones. I know now we can kind of close it out and then kind of talk about schedule, but at the Kings tomorrow night, that is the team, in my opinion, so far this season that has given them the most fits. It didn't look great against Phoenix either, but I still worry about how the Kings play basketball and if they were to see each other in the playoffs. The Thunder, that's going to be awesome next Tuesday after Christmas, but then they're back home for the Mavs and the Lakers again. It's like, you know what? Those games might have looked more difficult 2 weeks ago, but they're probably going to be heavy favorites in them. So I'm with you. I think 9.5 would be the updated over/under total,
given that it's already 4-2.
But I do think
I think my guess is 10-6. I think that's my guess.
But I do think that if they do inevitably come out of this 8-8, that they're probably going to be first in the West still, and then you kind of get an easier schedule. This team has showed a much better ability to beat these teams that are lesser than them, and it's going to be fun. But they've continued. I love watching them after a loss. We always talk about getting punched in the face, but I always love watching them after a loss to see how they respond. Yeah. Because one punch to the face and this team would have just cratered, and now it's totally different. And they have tough games coming up, but you got to keep winning these games. Because they are pretty healthy. We'll see what happens with Carl. I don't know. Ant was fine, right? He was holding his back. I don't know. Whatever. So got to keep plowing through wins, which is what this team wants to do. And the rest will work itself out.
Do you have anything else from that you want to hit on, or you want to do our final prize pick segment to wrap this up?
No, let's. I will say, again, for everyone that's listening, as we get close to the holidays, I always try to throw this in there. Like, you and I are just appreciative. This has been the most fun we've ever had. We got Cooper and Cam really helping us out. But just in case I forgot to say it at the end, just everyone have a happy holidays, safe travels, and winter solstice. So now the days are going to start getting brighter or lighter, I think longer. So I just hope everyone has a really great holidays. This has been so much fun these last couple of months. But, continue to take care of yourselves. Continue to take care of those around you. Check in and, happy holidays.
I love it. Yep.
Now let's get to what really matters.
Today's show is brought to you by prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. $100 sign-up bonus if you use the promo code Dane. This is you're going to be sitting around on Christmas. They have a free square for Christmas Day. It's
Kevin Durant points. Yeah.
Yep. Kevin Durant, who scores a point, you get a free square in there. Yep. It's already up here on that. So, I think you're a basketball fan, obviously, because you're listening to this. the Wolves aren't going to be playing that day. Like, that's just a fun thing to have going throughout the course of the day. Get your free Kevin Durant square. You know, everyone hates Joel Embiid now, so say he's not going to have more than 35.5 points, and just kind of ride that over the course of the day. Put a bigger one together. I am now very interested in these goblins and demons options that they have that give like added multipliers to it. The one I had here is just Josh Allen on the screen. His actual just even odds number is more or less than 242.5 passing yards in their game against the Chargers this weekend. But if you bump it up goblin style to 274.5, so if you eat those for 275 or more, and you have that, there's a multiplier to that. And if you do the same thing, where's Gardner Minshew here, right? Like his number's 223.5, but if you bump it up to 249.5 and you say Gardner Minshew is going to throw for 250, if both Allen hits 275 and Gardner Minshew hits 250, like, is that an even odds proposition? No, but just those two things happen. That's 6-1 on your money right there. This is a added cool wrinkle that Prize Picks is having, in addition to just a whole bunch of different things they have every single week. I didn't really do a whole lot of like, I like this one or that. I just focused on the goblins and the demons thing are depressed, but they're more likely to, Can
you do one of these reads with Britt? I would love for him to pick his goblins and demons.
I can't because I do the falling knife reads with
and he
Britt,
goes off, and he tells you about how to brew beer. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. So I just should to see. He's gonna be like, what?
Just drop him. Like, yeah. What do you like? Do you like Jake Browning as a goblin or a demon this weekend, Britt? Just ask him that next time. I am not sure I'm allowed to make picks anymore.
Yeah, you keep hurting people.
I like to apologize to anyone who had Jamar Chase in fantasy. He picked him last week, and then fast forward a couple hours in the game, and he's in a sling. So the Vikings, my Vikings, play the Detroit Lions this weekend. So I'm going to pick 2 Lions. And keep this momentum going. So yeah, I'm on Ross St. Brown over 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. That's also a demon, so a little juice on that one. And then David Montgomery over 59 and 52.5 rushing yards. David Montgomery's really good. I know you're done with fantasy. I'm done with fantasy, but he's gone over that mark the last 5 games. The Lions might be back again. They're tough indoors, so give me 2 Lions. Never want to pray for injuries.
Montgomery's was
52.5 rushing yards, yeah.
All right, I'm trying to...
I'm not picking a Viking ever again as long as Prize Picks sponsors the podcast because I'm afraid that I'm going to get someone in a hospital. So, yeah, throw those 2 in there. Throw them with some of Dane's picks.
Yeah, look at this. Okay, so if Josh Allen throws for 275, Gardner Minshew throws for 250, Amon-Ra St. Brown scores a touchdown, and David Montgomery gets over 52.5 rushing yards, for a $20 entry, you would get $500 if you won that.
Merry Christmas.
I love it. Let's we got 3. Those ones are the demons. Yes, we got three of those there. I don't know. I mean, it all fun. I just think it's fun, right? It's fun, and maybe don't do $20. Do $5. Right?
And if you're playing today on Friday, December 22nd, I think they have like a $50 protected play. So basically, you can play and get your money back. They're doing all these Christmas specials too. I know way too much about this, but they're one of the people that sponsor us. So as we always say, support those that help us and support us. Prize Picks, promo code Dane for $100, up to $100 match on your first deposit.
Yes, sir. All right, Kyle.
Schedule talk. Give me, like, I'm a fan of the pod. Yeah. I listen to it, so I don't have to hang out with my family. Like, what's up? What's on the radar the rest of 2023?
Yeah, we're gonna Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, Sunday, Monday. So we're not going to record on Christmas. The next episode will be on Christmas. We're going to record Christmas Eve morning after the Kings game. Chris and I are going to talk about that. We'll do that one quick before we go and see our families. And then the next episode will be after the next game, which is they play the Thunder on the 26th. And Jason and I will talk about that one as well. And yeah, we're not going to skip anybody next week. Britt will go on Thursday, and you will go on Friday. Who do they have the Mavs and the Lakers again there too. So it's kind of we're trying to, as much as possible. It's not always possible to immediately have one after every single game, but you and Britt and Jace and Chris have been cool with moving off of your day of the week to be able to make that happen. So yeah, we'll do one more before Christmas, and then we'll be back at it on Wednesday, and enjoy taking a couple days off. But there will be, if you're traveling on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, or traveling back home afterwards, you'll have we have this pod with Kyle and I, plus whatever Chris and I talk about after the Kings game on Saturday, and we'll keep going. It'll be
about a week away from that. Week away from the first year anniversary of the infamous players only meeting after they lost to the Pistons. And I think Luka Garza had to do like media or something. So I'm excited for New Year's Eve.
I remember being just outside of that locker room for a very long time.
Hey, would you like to go celebrate New Year's, or would you like to ask Luka Garza what it felt like to lose to the Pistons? Sick human beings, you media reporters. But no, I appreciate you, sir. Happy holidays. Best to all you and your family. Thanks to everyone that supports us and listens. And unlike basically every other aspect of corporate America, myself included, we will continue to work next week. So no days off.
Yes, sir. He's Kyle Theige. You listen to him over at Flagrant Howls with Phil Mackey, Score North YouTube channel there, and he's always got some sort of everything is so much better than it's ever been. Tweet.
That bit, dude. The people love that bit. I don't know if I love it anymore, but it is fun because this is the best season start of any. There are a lot of diehards that I'll tweet that out and I'll be like, I remember watching Pooh Richardson run high pick and rolls with this guy that ended up being arrested 10 months later. It's like, wow, like things were really bad. And it is fun because this season, if nothing else, we don't know how the playoffs turn out, but it's just cleansing a lot of moments and scar tissue and bad nightmares of the past. It's a really, really fun thing, and I've just tried to document it. So 21-6, best start in franchise history, and we'll see if they can continue.
Much like Christmas, right? Enjoy it. Don't let it stress you out, right? Like that's the mentality of this Wolves
Good
season,
work.
right? You know what I'm saying?
Work.
Like,
yeah.
Like Christmas is weird like that. It can be family, different things. Like I know I still did Christmas shop. It is stressful, and like there's a stress to like the Wolves being this good too, and Embiid fouls, and it's all this, and we get so electrocuted. It's like let's just keep everything.
Grab some wine,
right?
get around the tree.
Yeah.
And Feliz Navidad.
Boom. He's Kyle Theige at Kyle Theige. Listen to him on Flagrant Howls. Follow him on Twitter at Kyle Theige. I'm Dane. Until Saturday morning, Christmas Eve.
Sunday morning.
Sunday morning is Christmas Eve. Yes.
I got you.
Yeah. I don't know. It all blurs at this point of year. Until Sunday morning with Chris Hine. He's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.